Hello. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, news spread that struck fear into the hearts of San Francisco Bay residents. A series of brutal crimes committed by an unknown serial killer who murdered his victims in cold blood, without any motive and without any connection between them. He called himself Zodiac and created a symbol to represent him. He kept playing games with the police and journalists, sending provocative letters in which he confessed to his crimes and threatened new ones. He always ended his letters with strange ciphers that he challenged the police and the public to solve. Although he admitted to committing 37 murders, the police were only able to confirm 5, turning the Zodiac Killer case into one of the most complex and mysterious criminal puzzles in history. Welcome, and let me tell you today the story of the Zodiac Killer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll get notified with a new story. In early July 1963, Lompoc High School in Santa Barbara County, Southern California, was saying goodbye to a new graduating class. At that time, most high schools gave their seniors a day off to celebrate together like a graduation party. Indeed, the students agreed on a place and gathered to celebrate. But one student, 18-year-old Robert Domingos, decided instead to take his girlfriend, 17-year-old Linda Edwards, and go spend the day at a nearby beach. The plan was for them to spend the day and then Robert would drive Linda home. But hours passed, the day ended, and Wednesday came, and Robert and Linda still hadn't returned. Robert's father got worried and went to look for them at the beach. There, he found a horrifying scene. Both were murdered and their bodies dumped inside an abandoned shack by the beach. He quickly called the police, who discovered that the killer had tied both of them by their hands and shot Robert 11 times and Linda 9 times. The weapon used was a Winchester Western Super X.22 caliber rifle. Afterward, the killer dragged their bodies inside the shack and tried to set them on fire but failed because the matches were old. So he left them and disappeared. What was strange was that the investigation confirmed there were no fingerprints, no clues about the killer, no robbery attempt, no sexual assault, and the victims had no enemies. There was simply no motive for the crime, as if the murderer just happened to see two people sitting and decided to kill them. 3 years later, on October 30th, 1966, 18-year-old student Sherry Bates left her house in Riverside, California. Around 4:30 to 5 p.m., she left a note for her father, who was at work, saying she was going to the university library to do some research. She drove there, but that night, around 10 p.m., her father returned home, read her note and waited for her. Midnight passed, but Sherry hadn't come back, even though the library closed at 9. At 5:30 the next morning, he called the police to report her missing. Around the same time, a call came to Riverside Police from a guard reporting that he had found the body of a young woman on the highway near the university library's parking lot. Police rushed there immediately. They discovered the body lying between 2 abandoned houses. It was Sherry. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest, neck, and shoulder with a 7-centimeter knife. Next to her body was her purse with all her belongings, including money, untouched. Her car was still parked in the library garage. The crime wasn't robbery-related. Investigators believed the killer had somehow tampered with Sherry's car to disable it, then offered her a ride. Once they were far enough, he attacked. The only bright side was that Sherry seemed to have fought back. Under her fingernails were traces of brown hair and skin, and she had ripped a wristwatch off the attacker's arm without him noticing. Near the scene were also footprints of military boots, shoes that weren't sold in stores but only through army supply outlets. Yet despite all these clues, investigators couldn't identify the killer. Suspicion fell on a young man who had a past relationship with Sherry, but the evidence didn't match him. He remained a suspect but was never proven guilty. A month later, on November 29th, 2 identical letters arrived, one to the police, another to the Riverside Press Enterprise. Both titled Confession. They contained details about the murder that only the killer or investigators could know. The writer described Sherry as a target, insisted he wasn't sick but insane, and ended with a cryptic symbol. The next day, another handwritten note arrived to the police, the press, and Sherry's father. It said, "Bates had to die. There are more coming." Signed with a strange mark that looked like a Z or the number 2. 6 months later, a library custodian found a disturbing poem carved into a desk, glorifying murder. Investigators added it to the evidence. More than a year passed until December 20th, 1968, just 5 days before Christmas. That day, 17-year-old David Faraday went to pick up his girlfriend, 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen, to take her to a party. But instead of going to the party, they decided to drive to Lake Herman Road to spend time together. At 11:20 p.m., a driver passing by noticed a car parked strangely in the road, its doors open and windows shattered. He found David lying outside, shot in the head, and Betty with 5 bullets in her back, dead. Police later concluded that the shooter had fired at the car first to scare them out, then shot David as he stepped out, and Betty as she tried to flee. The weapon, a Winchester Western Super X.22 caliber rifle, the same one used in the 1963 murders. Again, no robbery or assault motive. But because of the different locations and years apart, nobody linked the cases at the time. Another unsolved crime. 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, 22-year-old Darlene Farron, a young wife and mother, finished work at a diner. She met 19-year-old Michael Mageau, and together they drove to Blue Rock Springs Park around midnight. Suddenly, another car pulled up. A man got out holding a flashlight, shining it at them. At first, they thought he was a cop, until he pulled out a 9mm pistol and opened fire. He shot them 5 times, then started walking away. Hearing Michael groan, he turned back and shot them both twice more. Michael survived, badly injured, but Darlene died. Initially, suspicion fell on her husband, but he was at work the whole night. A few hours later, the police received a call from a payphone. Calm voice said, "I want to report a double murder. They are in a brown car, shot with a 9mm. I also killed those kids last Christmas." Then he hung up. 27 days later, 3 letters arrived, one each to Vallejo Times-Herald, San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner, each handwritten and postmarked, claiming responsibility for both the Christmas murders and the July attack. To prove it, the writer included details only the killer could know: number of shots, weapon type, victim's clothing, and positions. He demanded the letters be printed on the front page by August 1st, or else more would die. Each was signed with a strange symbol, a circle with a cross inside. He also included 3 cryptograms of bizarre symbols, claiming if solved they would reveal his identity. Although the police were shocked by the letters, they asked the sender to provide more details to prove he really was the killer. On August 4th, another letter arrived at the Examiner, 3 pages long. He mocked the police, gave very specific details about the Blue Rock Springs attack, and expressed anger that the Examiner had printed his first letters on page 4 instead of the front page as he demanded. He used the same cross-circle symbol again, but this time he referred to himself for the first time as Zodiac. On August 8th, news broke that a high school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty managed to crack the Zodiac's cryptogram. It read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild animals in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. Killing gives me the most thrilling experience. The best part is when I die I will be reborn in paradise, and all the people I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow me down in collecting slaves for my afterlife." Police realized that the ciphers would never contain his real identity, just as he wrote. Meanwhile, survivor Michael Mageau was recovering in the hospital and began describing the attacker. Late 20s to early 30s, white, brown hair, round face, stocky build, about 5 feet 8 inches. But the description was too general to help much. Days passed until September 27, 1969. That day, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking near Lake Berryessa, 50 kilometers from Napa County. They noticed a man watching them from behind trees. He had light skin, stocky build, wore glasses, and soon approached wearing a hooded mask with the Zodiac's cross-circle symbol on the chest. He carried a gun and a knife strapped to his waist. He told them to hand over their money and car keys, claiming he was an escaped convict heading to Mexico after killing a prison guard. Brian tried to talk him down, but the man tied them both up with clothesline rope. Suddenly, without warning, he pulled out the knife and stabbed Brian 6 times in the back and Cecilia 10 times. Then he walked to Brian's car, wrote the dates of his previous murders on the door, added that day's date, wrote by knife, and drew his symbol. He then left. At 7:47 p.m., a call came to Napa police from a payphone. The calm voice reported the attack, gave the exact location and car description, and ended with, "I am the killer." When police arrived, Brian and Cecilia were still alive, but Cecilia later died at the hospital. Brian survived to tell the story. Investigators also found military boot prints at the scene, consistent with earlier evidence, and noted the depth of the prints indicated a heavy man, matching the suspect's description. 14 days later, October 11, 1969, cab driver Paul Stein picked up a passenger in San Francisco. At Washington and Cherry Streets, 3 sisters saw from their window that the passenger shot the driver in the head, took his wallet and keys, then cut a piece of his shirt soaked in blood and pocketed it. He wiped the cab to remove fingerprints and walked away. The girls called the police immediately, describing him as heavy-set, with glasses, but in the dark mistakenly said he had dark skin. Patrol officers searching the area stopped a white man with glasses nearby but let him go, thinking he didn't match the dark description. Later, the crime was wrongly logged as a robbery gone wrong. This enraged the Zodiac. 2 days later, he sent a letter to the Chronicle, admitting responsibility for killing the cab driver and including the bloody shirt piece as proof. He mocked police for letting him slip away, saying he was hiding in the bushes watching them. He threatened to blow up a school bus full of children. The letter was stamped with strange fingerprints no one has ever identified. On November 8th, he mailed another piece of the shirt with a greeting card, again mocking police, plus a new cipher of 340 symbols. The very next day, November 9th, he sent his longest letter yet, 7 full pages ridiculing investigators, confirming he was the man officers had stopped after the cab murder, and including a diagram of a bomb. Then he vanished for over a month. On December 20th, he resurfaced with a letter to famous lawyer Melvin Belli. He wrote, "I cannot control myself. I am afraid I will kill again. It will be my 9th or 10th victim. The children are still safe because I have not finished my bomb. Please help me." Belli contacted police and tried to lure him, but the Zodiac never replied again. On March 22, 1970, 22-year-old Kathleen Johns was driving with her baby daughter Jennifer to visit her mother in Northern California. A car behind her flashed lights until she stopped. A man told her her wheel was loose and offered help. He replaced it with the spare, but minutes later the wheel came off completely. He then offered her a ride. Pregnant and stranded in the dark, she accepted. During the ride, the man drove erratically, sometimes speeding, sometimes slowing. Twice they passed gas stations, but he refused to stop. Kathleen grew suspicious, and finally, when he slowed, she grabbed her baby and jumped from the car into the roadside brush. The man stopped, watched her, then calmly drove off. Later, Kathleen made it to a police station and identified the man as looking exactly like the Zodiac sketch. Her car was later found burned, likely by him. Days later, a bomb exploded at a police station. Though initially blamed on Zodiac, he denied it in an April 20th letter to the Chronicle, saying rain had ruined his bus bomb. On April 28th, another letter demanded that San Francisco Bay residents wear Zodiac buttons with his symbol. On June 26th, he mailed a map of San Francisco claiming another undiscovered victim. On July 24th, he complained people weren't wearing his symbol and admitted to the failed kidnapping of Kathleen Johns and her baby. In May 1970, nurse Donna Lass disappeared after leaving her job at a Lake Tahoe casino. The next day, her employer received a strange call claiming Donna had left town due to family issues, though her car remained parked outside her home. Investigators suspected Zodiac's involvement, especially since one of his later postcards referenced Lake Tahoe. Though no more murders were officially linked, Zodiac kept sending letters, boasting his victim count rose to 37. On March 13, 1971, he wrote admitting he had killed Sherry Bates in 1966. His strange letters and cryptograms continued until 1974, then suddenly stopped. No one ever discovered his identity. Over 350 suspects were investigated, but two men drew the most suspicion. The first was Arthur Lee Allen. He matched many Zodiac traits: stocky build, round face, white, brown hair, former Navy man. Friends recalled him wearing military boots. He owned a Zodiac brand watch with a similar logo to the killer's. He even told friends he was writing a novel about a killer taunting police with crime details. He lived near most crime scenes. Allen was known for troubling behavior, fired from teaching for carrying a loaded gun in his car. He often had alcohol problems. The only sick day he ever took was right after Sherry Bates's murder. Faraday and Jensen, the 1968 victims, were killed only 7 minutes from his home. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were attacked 4 minutes from his house. After Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard's stabbing, witnesses said Allen had blood on his knife, which he explained as chicken blood. A man named Ralph Spinelli later told police that Allen had confessed to being Zodiac and said he would soon kill a cab driver in San Francisco. The crime happened exactly as described, but police failed to act on the tip. After Allen was interrogated in 1971, Zodiac letters stopped for 2.5 years. The final confirmed Zodiac letters, in 1974, coincided with Allen's prison sentence for child molestation. When Allen died in 1992, survivor Michael Mageau identified his photo immediately, screaming, "That's the man who shot me!" But DNA, fingerprints, and handwriting from Zodiac never matched Allen's samples. He was never proven guilty. Another strong suspect was Richard Gaikowski, editor of the Good Times newspaper. He resembled the Zodiac sketch and worked 1 block from the Paul Steinkab murder scene. A former Army medic, he knew how to cut fabric the same way Zodiac cut the shirt, common in battlefield medicine but rare in civilian life. Oddly, Zodiac never sent letters on Wednesdays, the busiest day at Richard's newspaper. His handwriting resembled Zodiac's. Some names in Zodiac ciphers could be linked as abbreviations of his. He was even seen at some victims' funerals without knowing them. He was eventually confined to a psychiatric hospital in 1974, the same year Zodiac letters stopped. Still, fingerprints and DNA did not match, so he too was ruled out. And so, the true identity of the Zodiac Killer, along with his ciphers, remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to get more of the world's strangest and darkest crime stories. And tell me in the comments, which part of the Zodiac story fascinated you the most and why?